It's December 26th, and I want to plant my onions. I want to get them going early this year so that way I can have a good harvest when it comes in the springtime, right? So have something good in the springtime. I am set up in my bathroom. I do most of this stuff in my bathroom, and I'll show you guys some of the equipment later. But right now I have some of the trays that I'm using. The onions that I'm going to start today, I'm going to start them in this, and I'm going to keep them all the way through. I'm not changing or upgrading. I'm going to put about 3 seeds per cell, so that way I have enough. And I'm planting 2 varieties, and I'm going to share that right now. The 2 seed varieties that I'm planting, I keep all my seeds in this little picture thing. I think everybody knows about this on the internet. I've got my roots, so I do name each one of these little containers. I consider all the plants that are rooted in the ground as roots, and then onions. So the 2 that I'm doing for spring, I got them from Johnny Seeds, and I'm doing the Patterson F1, and the Rosa di Milano is the other one that I'm doing. So Rosa di Milano and Patterson F1. And I did write spring on them because I had 2 other ones that I started for over winter. And those are different. And I did the Bridger F1 and the Desert Sunrise F1. I did that back in August, and that's already in my garden. And I'll show you guys one day what that looks like in the garden. But for now, I'm starting indoors right after Christmas, these 2 varieties. And what I'll do is 18 here and 18 in this one, and 3 seeds per cell for each one of them. And the other thing I was going to show you guys is how I do this in the bathroom to make sure I don't make too much of a mess. I use one of these things. I did get them from Amazon. I can link where it is under the description box. But it really just feels like a tarp. The fancy tarp that's been, nicely sewn together, and there's clips. But it just sits perfectly in my sink here. And it doesn't make as much of a mess with the soil going down the drain and things like that. It just helps to protect it. I can lift it out and then just put the rest of the soil that I didn't use back in the bag. And speaking of soil, type of soil that I use is just a regular big box, Pro Mix. Nothing too fancy about it, just pretty basic. And I also use some worm casting, which I've put aside in a different other little bag. I think it's marked, but there. Yeah, I don't have a worm composter right now, so this is just worm casting that I just bought from the store and that I add. I don't have the bag for that. That's actually at the allotment, so I'll have to show you guys that another time. Okay, so I'll get this going. I will soak. What I'm going to do is fill this with soil, soak the soil through to make sure that the soil is nice and moist before I add the seed, and I'll come back once the soil is all moist. I'm not sure if you guys want to see all this, but just to kind of show you how I fill everything up. And because of my fancy nails, I want to make sure I don't mess them up too much. I am going to use some gloves, just regular old kitchen gloves for now, to fill this up. So simple, stuff on here, just fill it up. Just keep going here. I think you guys get the idea here of what I'm doing. Okay, so one thing I did do is I filled it up just a little too much. I don't know if you can really see, but I'm just going to take a little bit off so that way I can put the worm castings right on top here. I mean, the onion seeds are tiny, right? So they're just going to sit on top anyway. And I'm going to add some vermiculite on top of it once I'm done to cover it up, instead of covering them up with soil. So I'm just taking some of the little bit of extra soil there just to make a little bit of room for the worm casting that I'm now going to add. So I'm just going to do this. It's just a little bit, and this is not necessary, but why not? If you have it, just do it. Give them a little boost to get them going the right way. And this process is just something extra that I do. Like I said, it's not necessary. If you don't have casting, don't go buying a bunch of stuff. Just get yourself some soil. Get your onions going as soon as you can. The sooner you do it, the better. And basically, I'm going to wait for my onions to be about the size of a pencil by the time they go outside, which I'm hoping to be sometime in March if the weather is half decent and we don't have a bunch of snow out. I am in zone 8B, but even being in 8B, sometimes you get a late snow on the ground and you just can't do too much with that, right? Okay, so now that I've got all this there, I'm just going to do some bottom watering just to get all ready for the seedlings. Okay, so like I mentioned, you see how clean the sink is after I took that little plastic thing out. It's pretty good. Now all I'm doing is I'm going to fill up with water and just let everything sit for a while until it absorbs as much of the water as possible before I plant. So that way everything is nice and moist. So, I mean, you can see a little bit of the level as to how much I filled this out. So maybe a thumb full, you know, and then just let it sit. Start with the Patterson F1. I bought this in 2023. So I tend to write the year that I purchased the seeds. And this particular one is for the springtime, so it will bloom in the spring. So the Patterson hybrid, that's what we're going to start with. It's a yellow onion and it's a good keeper. I'm going to do these first 3 here. Just open up this. You can reseal it after you're done. So it does have a pretty good glue. So these seeds, they're a little bit coated. You can see they're coated, you can see they have a little bit of color to them, so you can actually see when you grab them and when you put them on the soil. That's going to be very helpful. So, like I said, we're going to do 3 at a time. Do these ones, because these ones you can clearly see they are coated and you can easily see them sitting on top here. So these next ones are Rosa di Milano, that's the one that we're going to put here. And I'm not sure if these ones are coated also. Might be. Let's see. And if they're not, you'll see the difference. No, these guys are not coated. So yeah, this is clear compared to the ones a few minutes ago. These ones are not coated with anything. Trying to get the camera to focus. But you can see it, right? These ones are not coated, so they're a little bit harder to see compared to moving the camera down. This one's going to be a little bit harder to see, but we're going to make it work. So I'm just going to flip this around. This one's going to be a little harder to see. I'll try and see if I use the spoon. It might actually kind of help me get a set of 3. You can see a little bit down. Because otherwise if you try to grab these with your fingers, you're not going to see anything. So grab 3, put it down. Yeah, the spoon does make this a little teeny bit easier to do. Okay, I am going to do some very, very simple marking for each one of these. I'm actually going to just use some painter's tape and just write the name of what I'm putting on the side. The reason being is I find that I can't find my little sticks, and also, you know, it's extra things. I'm just going to write it on there. And Patterson, so Patterson had the little side here, and all I'm doing is I'm taping it on the side like this. And you know, use what you already have in the house. Don't need to complicate things too much, because in the end you can use your little white plastic tabs for when they're actually in the ground, and that's usually when I mark it in the ground. So this was that done. Okay, now to cover this up, because these are such tiny little seeds, I'm just using vermiculite. I am not going to cover it with soil. The vermiculite will actually help keep some of the moisture, also keep fungus gnats from being created. So all I do now is I add and I cover it up with that. I'm not using any heat at all for the onions because you don't really need it for that. So I'm just going to sit all of them on a windowsill. Nothing fancy, just putting them out there. If you have a greenhouse, you can put them out in the greenhouse. As long as it's not too cold outside, they're probably going to be fine. A little slower to germinate, but they'll get lots of sunlight. So yeah, so mine are just going to go sit next to windowsill that gets lots of sun, and that's it. The seeds will be able to germinate through that very easily compared to if you dig too much of a hole and you put your seeds in, then you might lose some germination factor there. So just covering them up just a little bit, be a little bit more here. And so this is the planting of the onions for the spring of 2024. It's just a very simple. I have 2 varieties that I planted, the yellow one and a red one, the Patterson F1 from Johnny's, and Rosa di Milano red onions. Okay, thank you. That's it.